She was just so loved, and she was just like the most precious little thing. So strong and beautiful and going somewhere.
It was only a few years ago when things seemed to be moving in the right direction for a newly married young couple. He was a U.S. Army soldier in Anchorage. She was a National Guard combat medic who moved from Utah to Alaska to be with him. But this all shattered when Saria Barney was reported missing and then found dead. And the evidence against her own husband could now put him behind bars for years. Zarrius Hildabrand is going to trial for her murder. Law&Crime is in Alaska for the proceedings, and today, as a jury is selected, we are taking a closer look at this tragic case. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. I can't believe it, Father's Day is right around the corner. Where did the year go? Where did the time go? Now, if you're still looking for a gift, meet the Chef IQ Sense Smart Meat Thermometer. This is the secret to stress-free restaurant-level cooking. So whether you're a seasoned grill master or you're just trying to, throw on some steaks for the summer, the Smart Thermometer is a game changer. There's no more overcooking. There's no more, I think this might be done. No. Chef IQ tells you exactly when your meat is ready every step of the way. You just insert the wireless probe, you select your preferences, you hang out, you relax while you wait for the app alerts without hovering over to the grill like many people do. It also works with ovens and smokers and stovetops, air fryers, and for every protein. Prime rib, wings, salmon. Seriously, this Father's Day, it is time to raise the stakes, no pun intended, and cook with confidence. Use code SIDEBAR for 40% off site-wide at chefiq.com. Right now, in Anchorage, Alaska, prosecutors, defense attorneys, court personnel, they are preparing for a highly anticipated trial. Zarrius Hildabrand is accused of killing his new wife, Saria Barney, and dumping her body near a storm drain. According to investigators, he then took part in this desperate search for the 21-year-old National Guard medic, allegedly pretending to be distraught, even though he was the only one who knew what had really happened to her. That's the allegation. And to be clear, he is innocent until proven guilty, okay? He will have an opportunity to present his defense, and I want to get into this. But I got to take you back in time, September 2021. Zarrius Hildabrand joined the Army, according to the Anchorage Daily News, and he arrived in Alaska in April of 2022. The U.S. Army told the Daily News that he was a cannon crew member assigned to the 2nd Infantry Brigade Combat Team of the 11th Airborne Division, that he was based at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson. During that same period, Saria Barney was in Utah, where the Daily News reports she served in the National Guard as a field artillery firefinder radar operator. When she moved to Alaska in 2023, she was assigned to the Alaska Army National Guard's headquarters and headquarters company. She also worked at a local restaurant called Bread and Brew. Now, Hildabrand and Saria reportedly met during basic training in 2022. They married that December. But it was less than a year later when Saria would be found dead, and Hildabrand was charged with her murder. Now, the investigation centers on this weekend in August of 2023. So the couple reportedly went to Dave & Buster's with friends to celebrate Hildabrand's 21st birthday on Saturday, August 5th. They're believed to have gone to a bar afterward and then returned to their apartment around 2 a.m. Sunday, August 6th, around 10 a.m., was reportedly the last time that Saria was seen alive. But Hildabrand wouldn't report her missing until Monday, August 7th. And information about where Saria was and when on that Sunday, it has changed multiple times. We're going to get into that in just a second. But these huge search parties were formed to try to find Saria. Missing person posters flooded social media. Now, Hildabrand himself shared a flyer writing, "Updated information on my missing wife," and then in all caps, "Please share and repost." Saria's mother, Meredith, immediately flew to Alaska when she learned that her daughter was missing, joined the desperate searches, which included a dog park at University Lake where Saria liked to spend some time. Meredith told the Anchorage Daily News, quote, "Zarrius walked around for hours with me searching for my daughter, knowing that she was dead. He lied to me multiple times and tried to play it off like he was a concerned husband." The Thursday after Saria was reported missing, police found her body inside of a storm drain along a trail near her apartment complex. She appeared to have a gunshot wound to her left temple. This is according to a criminal complaint. Keep that in mind with what we're about to get into. So Hildabrand was arrested. He was taken to the Anchorage jail on charges of first and second degree murder, as well as tampering with evidence. And remember I mentioned that the timeline for Sunday, August 6th, is a little bit muddled? The reason I say that is because here's what Hildabrand allegedly told police, according to the complaint that's filed with the court. Hildabrand claims that when he and Saria woke up that Sunday, she needed to go to work. She had a job at a nearby sandwich shop, but according to him, they were both hungover, didn't feel well enough to drive. So according to him, Saria decided to walk to work at, again, Bread and Brew. It's about a mile away from the apartment. According to the complaint, quote, Zarrius said that Saria forgot to take her phone when she left the house, but did take her purse and wallet. Zarrius said that he discovered that Saria was missing later in the day when he went to pick Saria up at 1900 hours and found out that Saria never made it to work. Zarrius said that he had been searching for Saria ever since. Zarrius said that he had been to every friend's house, called Zarrius' parents, contacted all the hospitals and jail. Zarrius said that he was driving all around the neighborhood when he decided to contact police 36 hours after seeing her leave home. Now, according to the court documents, an officer apparently drove the route that Saria would have taken between the apartment complex and the restaurant, the one that she reportedly walked. That area was also reportedly searched by 60 to 70 volunteers, but they couldn't find her. Now, meanwhile, officers spoke with her co-workers at Bread and Brew, where she'd been working for about 2 months. They said Saria never showed up on Sunday, August 6th. In fact, here's what the complaint says. Quote, employees said they got a text from Saria's phone number on Sunday at 10:45 hours, 45 minutes after she was reported leaving the house by Zarrius, saying that she was calling off work. An employee texted back that Saria needs to call Craig, the owner, to tell him about the absence. Someone texted from Saria's phone that they didn't have Craig's phone number. She said she provided the texter with Craig's phone number. Craig said he was never contacted. Both the employee and Craig said that they know Saria has Craig's phone number on the phone because she had to call him the last 2 times she called off work. I talked to Saria's mom, who currently has Saria's phone. She said that Craig's number is stored in Saria's contact list as CEO of Bread and Brew and is not stored as Craig. That is very interesting information because it points to, allegedly, someone other than Saria sending these messages. Someone who didn't know the protocol for calling out of work and didn't know that Craig's number is already stored in the contacts, just not under his name. So the complaint also says that police discovered that someone had called 911 at around 2:45 a.m. on Sunday saying they heard a gunshot that sounded very close by. When officers responded that night, they found nothing suspicious, closed the call, but investigators later noted, per the complaint, that the caller's window was across a small courtyard from Hildabrand's apartment. Tuesday, the day after he reported Saria missing, Hildabrand reportedly spoke with police at the apartment and said she left at around 10 a.m. to walk to work wearing her work attire. But when officers spoke with one of Saria's friends, the friend claimed that Saria had never intended to go to work on Sunday and had already told her she was going to call out. Now, the argument could be maybe she changed her mind, but again, suspicious. In the criminal complaint, an investigator wrote, I asked Zarrius about the text from Saria's phone to work at 10:45 after she had already left the house and the fact that the phone was still in the house. He denied sending the text and couldn't explain how that happened. Now, that's just the beginning when it comes to the suspicious evidence, the suspicious behavior, the alleged changing stories, the evidence that investigators collected, because they will say it points to foul play. I'm going to get into that. And I want to be very clear, again, as we get into this, that Zarrius Hildabrand, the defendant here, is innocent until proven guilty. Okay, so I want to go through all this. I'm not going to do it alone. Let me bring on criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis back to Sidebar. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. Now, before we even dive into more of the allegations, more of the criminal complaint, more of the alleged evidence, I want to play something for you. So this is Saria's mother, Meredith, spoke with my colleague, Anjanette Levy, about searching for her daughter alongside Hildabrand before she learned what she claims is the truth. Here's what she said.
Zarrius called me Monday night from her cell phone and told me that he had just placed a missing persons report with the police. He was trying to lead us, me and my sister, different places, because we kind of broke away from the groups that the Army had. But other than that, it was very here's her phone, here's her computer. So it was like a real mixed bag where like my initial gut instinct was, this is not okay. I thought that from the second I got the phone call.
So Eric, I mean, that could be framed multiple ways, right? It can be framed differently by each side. On one hand, you could say, if he killed her, that's a really twisted detail, trying to cover his tracks, make it look like he had nothing to do. On the other hand, if he had nothing to do with this, if he's innocent, he was maybe just trying to do what he could to find his missing wife. First thing I have a question of is, would she be able to testify to that if she's called to the stand?
I think absolutely, Jesse, that is likely an admission by a party opponent. So if she is called by the prosecution, she can talk about any statements that the defendant made to her that are relevant, and certainly statements that could be construed as trying to throw someone off the trail, including the alleged victim's mother, would be highly relevant.
This whole situation that I mentioned before, going to work, right? Her walking to work, that they were allegedly hungover, so she walks to work a mile away. And then the text from the phone. The argument is that it seemingly wouldn't be from her because, you know, this is somebody who doesn't know the protocol, doesn't know Craig is stored in her phone. We're going to get to the rest of the evidence. Talk to me about those parts. How allegedly incriminating is that?
Ooh, Jesse, I think the texts are really problematic for Hildebrand. Look, he tells police that she left her phone at home when she went to work. And then 45 minutes after he says she left, there is a text message from her phone. Gosh, I wonder who could have possibly sent that. And then the content of the message indicates that the author is not the alleged victim, because the alleged victim had the boss's number saved in her phone just under a different name. But a person who's trying to impersonate that alleged victim wouldn't know that, so would probably ask about that, which this texter did.
And he didn't have a really, according to the criminal complaint, didn't have a really good explanation for why the text was sent, which is not great either. Let me go to this. So you go to the criminal complaint. It states, quote, Zarrius initially says that he stayed home all day on Sunday and, quote, vegetates. Again, this is according to law enforcement. He later changed his story and said that he went out and ran some errands. Zarrius told detectives that he didn't really worry about his wife until 2200 hours. That is when he went out and drove around the neighborhood looking for her. Zarrius said he waited until Monday evening to make the missing person report because he thought he might find his wife and find it was a misunderstanding. Eric, we've seen this be an important factor in a lot of cases. When does the partner, when does the significant other call law enforcement? And it can either be immediately, it could be hours after, it could be a few days after. That is sometimes used by prosecutors. How do you think it factors in here? How does a defense attorney explain that away?
You know, from the defense perspective, Jesse, there are a lot of reasons why a person might delay to some degree before getting authorities involved in some sort of situation. You know, I don't have much information about the nature of their relationship, how it had been going over the past months. You know, had they had troubles? Had they had disputes? You know, was something else going on at the home that might have been unsavory, but not related to the alleged victim's disappearance? Those are all reasons that could give a person pause in terms of, hey, should I call the cops and they're going to be here within the next 30 minutes? Or, you know, should I continue my own sort of measures to try and find this person where I think they might be? And so I think there are some potential explanations, but also kind of a shady look.
Going back to the complaint, let's continue. Quote, while in the house, Zarrius gave APD permission to look around and make sure Saria wasn't home. Detective LV noticed that the only bed in the house didn't have a sheet on it and was only covered in a mattress pad. LV also noticed that a set of brand new, still in the package sheets were on the kitchen table. Zarrius said that those sheets were purchased by his wife a week ago. He said that there was a sheet on the bed. He lifted the mattress pad slightly and showed us a fitted sheet on under the pad. We asked Zarrius if we could look under the sheets and lift the mattress to see if his wife was under there. He said we couldn't search under the bed because there were, quote, embarrassing items underneath. He finally told us it was stuff used for sex. We asked him if he would move those items while we looked away, and again he said we couldn't look under the bed. Eric looks suspicious.
Another shady look. Jesse, who puts a fitted sheet under a mattress pad? That part doesn't really make sense. It looks like stuff has sort of been tampered with, and that someone was planning on doing something with respect to that bed. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, is that Hildebrand's statement that you can't search under the bed, I'm not sure the jury's going to hear about that. Typically, you cannot hold an invocation of a constitutional right against another person, and that's really not consenting to a search, which is an invocation of a Fourth Amendment right. So the jury might not hear that he said you can't look under that bed.
Interesting. So is there a warrant issue there? Is there a Fourth Amendment issue there?
So I think in that moment, the police were asking him, hey, can we look under the bed? And he's like, no, which is an invocation of the Fourth Amendment. Subsequently, my understanding, though, is that law enforcement did get a warrant. And so that would cure any potential issue with respect to that search interaction.
By the way, as we go through this, I'll say this all the time. It's a criminal defendant's right. Their right only whether they want to take the stand. And we see it a lot in self-defense cases more than anything. But in this case, because he has this alleged interaction with law enforcement so much, do you think Zarrius Hildabrand could take the stand and explain his behavior? Do you think that would help him?
Yikes. Look, he's 21 years old. He does not appear particularly sophisticated. You look at some of the missteps that he made in just the police interactions that are rather elementary. He would be peppered with questions on cross-examination from the DA about the text messages, about the bed, about things that were found later, which are terribly problematic. And could he really explain all that away in an effective manner? That's questionable.
Okay, let's continue on, because another suspicious detail that detectives uncovered was the alleged trips that Hildebrand made to various stores. Remember, he first claimed he laid around all day on Sunday, vegetates, then apparently changed his story to say he ran some errands. What were those errands? Well, according to the criminal complaint, detectives determined that Zarrius Hildabrand went to a Fred Meyer's grocery store 3 different times on Sunday. Quote, one purchase at 12:26 hours, one at 18:12 hours, and one at 2200 hours. He purchased a jar of marinara sauce, a set of sheets, the same brand that was on the table, a mattress cover, some hydrogen peroxide, an empty spray bottle, and some miscellaneous personal hygiene items. Eric, hey, I'm just buying a bunch of things. You could cherry pick things that you think would be used in a crime or a cover-up, or is this purchasing items that you can use to cover up a crime and you buy other things to try to make it look like, oh, it's just my regular purchase, like the marinara sauce? I don't know. You tell me.
Did his grocery list, was it titled supplies you would need to cover up a crime scene? Because that's what it sounds like he bought. And on top of that, Jesse, who goes to the store 3 times in one day? I can imagine you go once, you forget something, you go back a little later. But to go back 3 times every 4 hours, and then you look at the contents of what he bought, and you start saying to yourself, oh, there's cleaning agents, there's other materials that might be used to try to conceal things, to try to evade detection. The walls seem to kind of be closing in as we continue to go over these facts.
And to be clear, generally speaking, purchase history is very hard for a defendant to argue against because there's surveillance footage of you going in. Sometimes there's a camera of you, purchasing the items. There's receipts. So it can be tough. Now, on Wednesday of that week, I want to go to this part. Wednesday of that week, so this is before Saria's body was found. We talked about it before. Detectives got a warrant to search the residence, to search the apartment. And what they reportedly found was gruesome. Quote, APD crime scene team lifted the mattress in the bedroom. They described the mattress as being saturated by human blood. There was so much blood on the mattress that the blood soaked through onto the carpet and into the wood frame. The crime scene team also used a blood reagent spray called Blue Star, which makes blood normally invisible to the naked eye visible. The reagent was sprayed in several areas of the house to include the bathroom, floors, and bathtub. After the Blue Star was sprayed, latent blood could be seen all over the bathtub and some of the floors, most likely after cleanup attempts were made. The complaint continues. The APD crime scene team also recovered the 2 handguns from the house. One handgun was fully loaded. One of the handguns was missing 1 bullet out of the magazine. No shell casing was found in the apartment. Eric, again, looks really, really bad. Is there any room for reasonable doubt there? I mean, first, let's start with this. Any way a defense attorney can prevent any of that evidence from coming in, not entirely sure. And number two, if it does come in, I mean, how do they explain it to the jury? Do they cross-examine the investigators about it, talking about a tainted investigation, sloppy police work? Because, just reading it right there, you can see how it looks.
Yeah, Jesse, a few things. If I'm defense on this, I'm exploring the scientific validity of that agent, the spray that the law enforcement used, that they claim, makes invisible blood visible. That sounds pretty magical. Has that been allowed in courts before? Has that been admitted in Alaska court? Is it scientifically reliable in terms of what it shows? Could there be a false positive? Could it be showing something else? These are all questions defense has to look at to try to exclude that. If it's not excluded, it still doesn't rule out the possibility of an accident. It doesn't rule out the possibility of a suicide. It doesn't rule out the possibility of self-defense. And so while very problematic, it doesn't make the case a slam dunk.
Interesting. Yeah, I've seen cases before where it might be hard to argue away the cleanup, but you could say, I didn't kill this person, or I didn't murder this person. I panicked. I was stupid. I was panicked, but it doesn't mean that maybe it was like a case of self-defense, or I discovered this person dead, or something like that. Not really entirely sure where the defense is going to go on this, but something interesting to think about. Now, around this time, detectives began receiving reports on Mr. Hildabrand's cell phone, and discovered that in addition to these 3 trips to Fred Meyer's, he also allegedly made a trip to Lowe's. So Lowe's employees showed detectives video of Hildabrand allegedly buying a large 96-gallon garbage can with wheels. Officers began searching for that trash can around the apartment and eventually found it in the back of a landscaping truck that was parked at the complex. It reportedly contained what appeared to be blood. So detectives, they came up with this theory that Saria's body must be nearby. This is when they send up a drone to give them an overhead look at the trail, and that is when the drone operator said he saw what appeared to be a pillow and something, quote, light colored down inside a 4 to 5 foot storm drain. Quote, APD and AFD were able to recover the human remains out of the drain pipe. The human remains were positively identified as Saria Hildabrand. It appears she has a gunshot wound to her left temple. Eric, I think there's one thing to talk about Lowe's, but it's also the location of the body, right? We talk so much about the totality of the evidence in this case, but the location of the body, if someone else would have done this, out of all places to deposit the body, if he's being framed, yeah, put it near the house. But at the same time, the other way of looking at it is someone who, if the prosecution says he did it, not entirely sophisticated, finds this place that's near the house. I think the location of the body is very interesting.
Oh yeah, a number of items. Look, a 96-gallon garbage can, that's like human body size. Like that would be one reason why you would get that. And then, like you said, when you combine it with the totality, you look at the other supplies he bought, you look at the location of the body. It sounds like this is proximal to where Hildabrand was. He probably had knowledge of it. He probably had access to it. Who else would in the vicinity might know about this? That's a fair question. Are there other construction folks that may have been close by who may have had some reason to want to harm the alleged victim here? A lot of questions remain, but certainly when we look at all the things together as one, that evidence seems rather compelling.
Let me ask you this: jury selection. Who do you want on the jury for the prosecution? Who do you want on the jury if you're on the defense?
Sure. So prosecution side, I'm going to want people who have an understanding of marital disputes, who have an understanding perhaps of domestic violence. Maybe they've seen something like that take place either in their own marriage or in the marriage of people they know. Because I think the prosecutor is going to have to establish some kind of motive for this. Why would he have done this? Was everything going on along hunky-dory in his marriage, or were there problems? On the flip side, for defense, you want folks who are open-minded, who are not going to, hear kind of a spiel from from one side and just accept that as gospel because they're police, because they're prosecutors. You want folks who are critical thinkers, who are going to say, hey, what are the other plausible explanations? Are there things that haven't been ruled out? And what information are we lacking that I want to see? I think that's the kind of mindset you want from the defense perspective.
Opening statements, right? In a case like this, I always think opening statements. They say sometimes opening statements can, you can win a case in opening statements, even though, by the way, the openings are and the closings are not evidence. How would you frame it if you were the prosecution? How would you frame it if you're the defense?
If I was the prosecution, I am going to highlight the inconsistencies. I'm going to highlight the discrepancies that came from the mouth of Hildebrand, things that are demonstrably untrue, that we can show with evidence are deceptive, and then you sort of suggest, why would a person be deceptive once their wife has gone missing and once they bought, a human being sized trash can and all these supplies to cover up a crime? On the defense side, I'm going to talk about, at least with the evidence we have right now, we don't know who may have done this. We don't know exactly what happened. Have we been able to rule out that someone else could have done this? Have we been able to rule out that she could have done this to herself? And I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just asking questions based on some of the things that need to be tied up in the evidence in the case. And so I think that those are two potential approaches in opening statement.
One other thing I want to explore. So in interviews with the Anchorage Daily News, friends and family, they described Saria as warm, loyal, hardworking, a strong sense of purpose, close ties to her family. A friend that she'd worked with in Utah, Kylie Clark, told the Daily News she worked her butt off. If she was invited to anything, she would be there no matter what. So kind of, personalizes the victim in this case. But in response to questions about Saria and Hildebrand's relationship, she said, quote, "They seemed really happy." Now, she did question the theory that Saria left her phone at home. Quote, "The story just didn't make sense. She never puts her phone down. She's 21. That thing is glued to her hand." That's a key point. But Eric, I do wonder if that's something the defense will highlight. Guy just kills his wife out of nowhere? Makes no sense. They were all happy. Although you and I both know that wouldn't be the first time that outward appearances versus what's really going on behind closed doors.
Sure. Juries in cases like this, they want a coherent story before they brand someone with this scarlet letter for life, and they know what type of sentence is coming down the pike if they do that. They want to be sure. And so you want that sort of cohesion within your mind as a juror. Why would a person have done this? What could be the motive here? I think the prosecution has to come with some semblance of a motive. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's hostile, sometimes it's sociopathic. And I'm not sure what could be the potential motive in this case, but I think the prosecution does have to shore that up. They've got to present the jury with a reason why Hildebrand, at 21 years old, would have offed his wife, also 21, under what appears to be gruesome circumstances.
Now, Saria's family held a remembrance ceremony for her at University Lake Dog Park. You getting a sense of what this loss is to friends, family, the community? It's just an awful, tragic situation. As for Hildebrand, his trial is expected to get underway this week. The first-degree murder charge carries a maximum penalty, our understanding, of 99 years in prison. Before I let you go, Eric, how does the sentencing work on that? Up to 99 years. How does something like that work?
Typically, if a person is convicted of first-degree murder, you're looking at the max. That there's a reasonable likelihood that he would get 99 years, even at 21 years old. And even if he didn't have to do every single day of that sentence, I think he's looking in a practical sense at the rest of his life behind bars. Now, there are other charges too. There's a second-degree murder charge. There's also a tampering with evidence charge. If he is acquitted on a greater charge, but found guilty on one of the lesser charges, well, then the judge has some discretion, and the judge is going to take into consideration the crime for which he was convicted, the circumstances, but also his age, also if there is a lack of criminal history, also any sort of contributions to the community, including his military service. And so if he's not convicted of the top charge, but convicted of something lesser, that sentence the range of it could vary wildly, and it's hard to kind of predict where it might fall, 20 years, 40 years, 60, it's hard to kind of say.
I'm going to speculate one last thing before we go. I don't know if they're going to do this. I have no idea. Again, I'm speculating. mental health defense, former military, PTSD. Again, I'm speculating. I have no evidence to back this up, that he suffered anything like this. But I'm just wondering here, when you talk about a mental health defense, not insanity, but to negate certain elements of a crime, is that something you think we should potentially be looking out for? I really don't know, though, at this point.
I think we've got to keep our eye out for it during both the trial phase and the sentencing phase if we get there, if there's a conviction.
Right.
Sometimes during the trial phase, if there is some sort of mental health issue going on, it can impair a person's ability to form the mental state required to be convicted of a crime. So, here, intentionally killing somebody or knowingly engaging in conduct that has a substantial risk of death, if a person is so out of whack mentally, that can give a jury pause as to whether they could form that mental state. At the sentencing phase, if he's convicted, certainly the judge would consider any sort of mental health issues going on, and those could inure to the benefit of the defendant. And so, something to keep our eye out for sure.
Eric Faddis, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. See you next time, everybody.